Hello, my most amazing artists. Today we're going to draw a still life like artist Paul Cezanne. In a still life, the objects are usually everyday objects that you would see in ordinary life. And they are arranged in such a way where they would make an interesting composition, another art word. So here you can see I have a bowl of apples. That is what we are going to be making today. So here are the materials that you will need to create your bowl of apples still life. I have a blank piece of paper, a black crayon, a lid or something circular that you can use to maybe create some of the apple shapes, and I'm going to be using watercolor paints. So I have my paint and my brush and my water. However, if you don't have paints, remember you can still create art using markers, crayons, or anything that you have. So here's how we're going to get started. We're going to first find about a handprint down from your bottom of the paper and move tiny bit up. And we're going to create a nice horizontal line. Not all the way across, just in the middle. That is going to be the top edge of our bowl. And now I'm just going to create that U-shaped bottom and connect it. Now my bowl is fancy. It does have those little decorations, but I'm not going to worry about those right now. I'm just getting the shape. In fact, some bowls even have what we call a foot that they sit on. And that would just be simply adding a small little shape at the bottom. So here I have my bowl. Now I'm going to get ready to add some of my apples. So here I'm going to use my shape that I have, and I'm going to make sure that my apples stay in my bowl. So I don't want my apples out, I want my apples in. And notice some of these apples, you can only see the tops or half of them. So I'm going to start off by creating some half apple shapes just by putting my shape tracer down and starting tracing and stopping when I get to that line. That way they look like they're sitting in the bowl. So now I'm going to create another apple. Maybe this one's a little bit higher up. Notice it might actually be overlapping. So I don't want to draw on top of the apple that I already created. So I start on that line and come across. Now it looks like I have two apples. One of them looks like it's in front of the other. I'm going to create another apple on this side. Maybe this one's sitting really low. There, I can only see just a tiny bit of it peeking out. And now I want to maybe add some of those apples that are sitting up on top. Now remember, they're kind of behind the apples, so I'm just going to use that same little trick of just tracing part of them. And maybe even there's one more over here. So now I have my apples in my bowl. I want to add a table line as well. So I'm going to start over here, and about a finger space or two below, I'm just going to stop. And then I'm going to pretend that my line is going all the way across, hop right to here, and finish it. So now it looks like my apples in my bowl are sitting on the table. So now we get to decide how we're going to add some little stem shapes, and then we're going to worry about coloring. So a little trick is simply making a little letter U and giving it a little line on top. So now it looks like that apple is turned and facing the corner of my paper. Maybe this apple, I'm gonna put the stem right here. So it's facing kind of up. This one looks like it may be turned and facing this direction. So you can kind of see just by placing the little stems, you're determining what shape and where they're facing. So maybe this one also going that direction. And this guy down here, maybe we have his little stem right here in the middle. Okay, so now I have my bowl of apples complete, ready to add color. So let's start by thinking about the different shades and the different tones. If you notice, an apple isn't necessarily all red. There are some, I like to call them highlights, or some areas where it's not always exactly the same. So we're going to keep that in mind as we paint our apples. So I'm going to start off by swirling in some red, and I'm going to choose some apples that I'm going to paint mostly red. So I'm going to do this guy right here, and I'm just going to fill in almost all of my apple. But remember, not my entire apple is necessarily red. So I'm going to leave some space for me to add another highlight, that kind of warm yellowy color that we can sometimes see. So I'm going to keep that one. That's going to be a red apple. Maybe this guy right in the middle also will be a red apple. They could all be red apples if you wanted, but I'm just going to give you some different looks when adding paint. So I'm going to create here, and I'm going to leave maybe a little part of this too, so that I can add some of my different tones. All right, so there's my other red apple. Maybe I'm going to switch to maybe a Granny Smith apple, maybe have some green. So again, I'm gonna not fill in the whole apple because I remember that some parts of my apple might have some other colors on it. Maybe there's another green apple down here. And you can actually paint right over your stem because your crayon will resist the watercolor paint, which is kind of cool. I'm gonna leave just a little bit open for that. Maybe I want my last apple to also be a red apple. So I'm just gonna come here, fill it in. Now I used more water that time, so my apple's not quite as red, but if you wanted to make it more red, you just go back and get more paint. Not more water, more paint. Okay, now I'm ready to add some of those highlights. My brush has been cleaned, and I'm gonna go ahead and choose a nice warm yellow color. So I'm going to fill this in, and I'm gonna kind of let those two colors talk to each other and mix a little bit, just to give it that more realistic. Look at how cool that looks. All right, a little bit more yellow and maybe a little tad more water here. So I can do the same thing. You want the colors to kind of mix a little bit. So it doesn't look like it's a striped apple. So it just looks like it has some highlights. I'm gonna keep going over here. I didn't even need to get more. Look at that, that looks so cool. All right, I'm gonna clean my brush off a little bit because I noticed it was getting a little dark. And I'm going to just continue with my highlights. And they look awesome. So now I'm ready to think about making my bowl. Now here's where you can be a little creative. If you did want to add some fancy designs, so it kind of looks like the bowl that I have over there. If you wanted to add some of those fancy scalloped edges, you could do that, of course. And you can think about the color that you might want to create for your bowl. Now my bowl here is white, and I might decide that I like it white, or you could think about giving it your own color using your imagination. So I could think about giving my bowl maybe a nice, how about blue? A nice, looks like periwinkle blue. All right, so then I'm just gonna come over and add my paint, fill it in, and paint my bowl. I like to sometimes outline the edge first, and that way I can go slow to outline and then a little quicker on the inside. There we go. You just kind of add some water and move the paint around, and it will automatically have different tones and different shades. I kind of like that. So there's some different shades of blue mixed in there. Add more paint, less paint. Okay, loving that. Now you're going to think about your table, and you can think about, is there a tablecloth on the table? Maybe there's a solid table. You get to decide what color you want to use for your table. So I'm thinking maybe giving it this nice orange color, because I know that orange and blue are kind of opposite on the color wheel, and that will make it really pop. So I'm just gonna come in, paint around, same as I did my bowl. outline carefully where I don't want it to mix, and then or go out of the lines, and then a little faster where I can paint a bigger space. And now remember, you can always go back and add. I like to add some darker paint on top of the lighter paint. So, and I like the strokes that stay in there. I think it gives it a real painterly look. Okay, finally we have our background. Now you could simply paint the background, or you could think about, is there wallpaper? Maybe there's a pattern in the wall. I'm gonna add some striped wallpaper. Careful not to get your apples crayon. So I'm going to put some striped wallpaper in the background. You can even put designs on the wallpaper. Maybe there's little marks, V's here, just to give the wallpaper some design. You can be as creative as you want. There. Okay, so now I'm ready to paint my wallpaper. And I'm thinking I'm going to keep it nice and light, so go for maybe a nice cheerful yellow. Maybe it's even yellow and another color. I might reserve the right to change the wallpaper pattern here. So I'm going to paint stripes of yellow, like a pattern, every other one. Just the ones with the V's. I'm going to paint those yellow. And then maybe, let's think, purple and yellow are opposite on the color wheel, so maybe that would be kind of fun. I'm going to use a little bit of purple and paint those stripes in. So you can decide however you want your background to look. You can do solid, you can do stripes. It's really up to you. And remember, it's your art piece. You're the artist. You decide what you think you'd like to see in your art piece. So I'm going to finish up these stripes, and don't forget, once your artwork dries, an artist always signs the bottom. You can give it a nice little signature at the bottom. And don't forget, friends, keep on creating.